Hello again, algebra students. Today we are moving on into a new topic. We're going to be looking at something called literal equations. A lot of the problems you're going to see today are going to look more like formulas because we're going to have a bunch of variables instead of just having just an x or just a y or an n. We'll have a whole bunch of variables. So today we're going to be working on getting one variable that's chosen to be isolated, to be all by itself. Really what we're doing today is we're just rearranging equations. So you won't be really crunching very many numbers today. You're going to be just moving stuff around in an equation. We're going to use exactly the same steps, though, that we use when we solve equations. When we're getting, if we have just numbers with one variable, we're going to do the same steps here. It's just that we won't have those numbers to crunch. So our directions say solve each equation for the indicated variable. When they're talking about the indicated variable, they mean this. I want to get the x. I want to solve this for x. Right now, here's my x. It's being added with the c. I want to get rid of the c. So to get rid of adding something, I would subtract it, right? Don't worry about the fact that it's a variable instead of a number. I would subtract c. So that's going to go away. There's my x. That's what I really wanted. G and C are not like terms. They can't go together. They don't turn into like a GC. It's just going to be G minus C. Now, I am perfectly fine with this. A lot of times people want to rewrite it so that the x is first. So they're going to say that x equals G minus C. They just flip-flop the two sides of the equation. And right there's my answer. Sometimes we will have more than one way that we can write equations, but typically today it's going to be pretty obvious which way we want to write these. In this problem, I want to get this a right here to be all by itself. Right now the -4 is attached to that a, so we're going to leave that alone. That is the last thing that's going to go away. However, I know how to get rid of subtracting 1. I would add 1 to both sides. And again, the u and the 1, those don't match. That's just going to be a u plus 1. Now, to get the a by itself, I do have to divide. There are going to be some problems in this lesson today and the next lesson where we might want to separate that and do some actual division. However, the u doesn't divide nicely by 4, and the 1 doesn't divide nicely by 4. If these had been multiples of 4, like 4u and 8, then we would split it up, and I would show you how to do that in just a minute. But when I solve this for my a, this stuff that I have as a fraction, it just stays like that. So if you really want to put the a first, you certainly can. But the rest of this looks kind of like a big mess of a fraction. It just stays just like that. U plus 1 all over -4. Sometimes people don't like that negative to be kind of hanging out in the denominator. So they might just rewrite it with the negative kind of pulled out in front of the whole thing. Either one of those two answers are fine with me. That's a third way to write it. I like these first two ways just fine, but some people say, oh, well then let's just clean this up a little bit more and put this negative like it's a -1 that's getting multiplied there. And they actually distributed it into here, and that's how they got -u minus 1 or plus a -1, and then the 4 is in the denominator. Personally, I don't care which of these three options you give me, but if you had the options written down on paper, you should be able to pick out the one that would match your answer. Today's practice problems, by the way, are going to be multiple choice. So if you got to that problem, you should be able to look at the options that you had available and know which one would work. In this problem, I want to get the a by itself. And right now, here's my a. It's being multiplied by k. If I want to get rid of that k, to get rid of multiplying, I would divide. So I would divide by k. And then I would divide the other side by k as well. You have two options here. Since w and v, neither one of them can simplify with that k, I would be just fine with leaving that as one big fraction. That would work. Another way to write this would be to divide each part by k. So if I would divide this by k and divide this by k, that answer, excuse me, would be A equals W over K plus V over K. Again, I am okay with either answer. That's the answer that they have for the problems that you'll be seeing today. That's what it's going to be written as. But again, both of those work just fine. Excuse me. Here's our last problem. I need the x to be by itself. And that's right here. And I'm going to take this one really nice and slow. We're going to do separate steps. The 4 that's with the x, that is the last thing that's going to go away. So let's start by getting rid of my 4y. And it's adding 4y or a positive 4y, so I would subtract 4y. So I would have g minus 4y equals 4x minus 8. And I would next try to get rid of the 8. So to get rid of subtracting 8, I would add 8 to both sides. And again, it doesn't match with any of the other stuff. So I would just have, now it's getting to be kind of a long line, g minus 4y plus 8 equals 4x. And here's my vertical line. I still have to get rid of the 4. So I would divide by 4. Now, if I didn't have the g in this problem, both of those numbers would divide really nicely by 4. Since the g doesn't divide nicely by 4, I would just leave it as one big fraction. So my answer is just going to be x equals this big kind of a mess of a fraction. G minus 4y plus 8 all over 4. So today's worksheet that you're going to do as practice problems has several of these problems. They're all multiple choice. So you need to show your work. You have to show the steps that you're using to get a variable all by itself, whichever variable they're asking you for. But then again, it is multiple choice so that it's a little easier for you to find that answer and make sure that you're doing these right. This is not the only day that we're going to spend on this. We'll spend more time on this, but if you need any help with this, please feel free to let me know.